Chapter 13. Things seemed different when Melody went back to work next week. Her mom took Christian to babysit, as was her usual habit. He seemed happy to spend time with his grandma. Melody picked up one of the new resources she had ordered for counseling. It was a course on post-abortion recovery. She read it with a new heart. It presented the idea to reassure the woman who had chosen abortion that her lost child was alive and well in heaven. She might want to name her child. Melody gave that some thought. Yes, her baby should have a name. She had always felt that it had been a girl. She would have been part Fijian and part Mennonite. Name her Ebony, a voice whispered in her ear. Ebony. What a lovely name. Very descriptive, too. It made her think of a beautiful, precious stone. She decided to name her little girl, now residing in heaven, Ebony. The center had a prayer corner underneath a stairwell next to the main office desk. It was a private little place behind a curtain with a small table holding a 12-week fetal model, a candle, and some baby ornaments. There was a Bible there, too, a place for personal prayer and meditation. Melody usually said a little prayer. Jesus, please give Ebony a kiss and a hug from me today. Tell her that I'm looking forward to being a mother to her in heaven one day. This became her habit at work and at home. She set aside the first portion of her day in quiet time in her prayer corner. It was good to remember that we are only human. We cannot do anything on our own strength. Working with the stress of pre- and post-abortive women and men, the surrounding multitude of needs of a single parent, it was a massive work. God blessed it. One afternoon during the teaching of her weekly parenting class, Melody felt a pang in her heart. She had 6 young women, each expecting a child. Some of them had other children too, and brought them along. She was holding one of the tiny newborn babies. She smelled the sweet smell of baby skin on the face of the little one, caressed her soft hair. Oh, I would love to have another baby of my own, she thought. She began to entertain the idea. The feeling grew stronger week after week. Finally, she shared it with Richard. Honey, she smiled at her husband. He was reading a work manual. Came his reply. How would you feel about having another baby? There, she had said it. What? Something jolted Richard out of his reading. Another baby, Richard? She pressed. I would like for Christian to have a sibling. Oh, he finally looked up at her. Now is not a good time, dear. We're trying to get things off the ground and finish this house. We can't afford another child right now. Well, when then? Melody felt sad at Richard's response. Maybe in a year or 2 we can talk about it. Richard ended the conversation. So, that was it. Conversation over. Melody continued drying the supper dishes in frustration. Dear God, she prayed in her mind, if now is not a good time for us to have another child, then please take this desire away from me. If it is, please change Richard's heart. Mom Evans had come over to babysit Christian one evening. Melody was out speaking at a church on behalf of the center. While tidying up the house for her daughter, after putting her grandson to bed, she came across what seemed to be half a balloon lying on the dryer. Thinking it must be disposable, she tossed it into the garbage basket beside the dryer. Next day Melody was looking for her diaphragm, which she had left out to dry. She couldn't find it. She finally called her mother. Mom, did you see my diaphragm when you were babysitting the other night? I don't know what a diaphragm is, dear, her mother answered innocently. Melody began to describe it. I thought it was a used balloon, and I put it in the garbage, I think, Mom said. I'm sorry. Oh dear, Melody had been especially fitted for it by her doctor, and they were not cheap. She went to have a look in the garbage basket. There it was. She decided to sterilize it and reuse it. It was a few weeks later when Melody realized that her period was late. That's unusual, she thought. I'm always as punctual as a clock. She decided to try one of the pregnancy test strips that they used at the center. After all, it was good practice for her job. There were the results, 2 red lines on the test strip indicating a positive result. Oh, dear Lord, have you changed my husband's heart? That night the couple were planning to go out and visit their neighbors for an evening. Melody waited until she and Richard were getting ready. I have a New Year's surprise for you, honey, she announced. What's this? He accepted the test strip she handed to him. Then his face dawned the realization of its significance, and she could see color draining from his face. You're not. He couldn't say it. His wife was smiling as she nodded her head. Yes, honey, we're going to have another baby. She saw that he wasn't smiling. In fact, he looked rather angry with her. Dear God, you haven't changed my husband's heart. Why am I pregnant? For 2 weeks after her announcement, Richard seemed grumpy. He wasn't his usual cheerful self. Melody was hurt that he wasn't happy about the pregnancy, even though she realized that in the natural, a faulty diaphragm was probably the reason that she had got pregnant. Yet she believed her prayer had been answered. She thought God would change Richard's heart first, but it was up to him. He had a free will. She continued volunteering as a counselor and a young mom's coordinator for the parenting class each week, while her mom generously babysat Christian. She also held a position on the charity's board as the public relations head. There was a lot of responsibility in her young life. Melody also continued the self-post-abortion counseling course. No one knew about her experience except the clients, she told, in the course of trying to help them in their decision. It was a miracle no one else in the community heard about it or spread it as gossip. Then one day, after finishing the course, Melody decided to take courage and confide her story to a fellow executive director in the same work. Hello, this is Jordan Swanson speaking. His voice sounded friendly enough. Hi, Jordan. This is Melody, calling from the Prairie Valley Pregnancy Crisis Center. I wanted to thank you for sending us those free pregnancy tests. It saves us a lot in our monthly budget. You're so welcome. How are things going at your end? He said. Jordan, I've been wanting to tell you something. Do you have a few minutes? She was trying to get past the lump forming in her throat. Sure, what gives? Since we both got into this pregnancy crisis work about the same time, I feel that I have a special connection with you, Melody went on. Yes, it's hard work on so many levels. Jordan seemed caring. Well, that's not really what I wanted to share. It's just that because you seem to share the same burden about abortion that I do, I thought I could trust you with something. Jordan's interest was piqued. Sure, you can trust me. It's personal. It's, about me, Jordan. There was silence on the line. You see, Jordan, the reason that I care so much about abortion is because I understand what a woman is going through from my personal experience. A long pause ensued. Oh, I see, Jordan finally replied. You know, Melody, knowing your circumstances now, if you were here in Winnipeg, we wouldn't allow you to work at our center. He could have slapped her face. Jordan, you're a man, not a woman. You direct your pregnancy crisis center completely staffed by women. You fight abortion now, but you once worked for Child and Family Welfare Services, which has a policy to support choice. After that, Melody didn't trust Jordan Swanson the way that she had before. Unfortunately, many years later, she would remember why she should never have trusted this man. Melody was in her 7th month of pregnancy when she began to make plans for maternity leave. Sally had become a very close friend in addition to a co-worker at the center. She encouraged her not to feel guilty about leaving. We'll just have to find someone to take over for you for a while. "Don't worry, Melody. You will have a new baby to think about," she smiled. So Melody went home in her eighth month to await the birth. After a 45-hour labor, she had a natural delivery. Jeffrey David Wolfe was born. At first, Melody was a little sad. She had so much wanted a girl, probably because of the abortion of Ebony. She somehow thought that having a daughter would help her make up for the loss. Although the labor was long and painful, the birth of a healthy son made up for it. Little Jeffrey looked just like a miniature of his father. "If I painted a black mustache under your little nose, you would pass for your daddy." Melody hugged her baby. Richard brought her long-stemmed red roses, and she enjoyed many visitors. If she had given birth to a girl, Melody had planned to name her Miriam. This was because of her love of tambourine and dance. The Old Testament story of the parting of the Red Sea in Exodus and how Miriam had led the women with dancing and the tambourine was her inspiration for this name. But it was not to be. Melody's plan to go back to her job at the Pregnancy Crisis Center didn't go as planned. Other women had come on board and taken her role. She concentrated on raising her family and doing other volunteer work. Initially, they had to live in the basement of their country home for 3 years until they could afford to make the upstairs livable. Parenting was a lot of work. Her husband left early every morning to work in town. She was at home a lot raising the boys. Sometimes she felt like a single parent, as Richard, being a workaholic by nature, worked long hours. Sometimes she had the use of their single vehicle, the K-car, had been replaced by a station wagon. She liked to take the boys to Moonset Park in nice weather for outings. The railway wound through the park, and the boys loved to hear it whistle. "Choo-choo!" Jeffrey exclaimed in his cute baby voice. The boys were on a blanket, stuffing their faces with bologna sandwiches and chips. "Can I have some more juice?" Christian asked. "Yes, son. There's a bottle in the picnic basket and cups. Help me get them out," Mummy offered. "Parks and swings! Parks and swings!" her son screeched delightedly, making a beeline towards his beloved playground in the park. The kids just loved coming here to play on the merry-go-round and slides, which had been in the park since Melody was a child. In addition to her parenting priorities, Melody busied herself with a number of other volunteer commitments. She was a go-getter and a kind of mover and shaker, one might say. She saw a need and started a group to try and meet it. These included a group in the education system for parent involvement, a group to provide alternative fall parties to the pagan celebration of Halloween, and a sacred dance company featuring the use of the tambourine in worship arts. It seemed during these years of young parenting she had endless energy and stamina. All the while, 7 years in fact, the Prairie Valley Pregnancy Crisis Center continued serving the community without her. It did seem that she had a number of single-parent connections anyway, and continued to offer support as she was able. Time passed and her youngest son was ready to go to school. 2 big yellow school buses came rumbling down their country access road on the first September day of school. The gold paint complemented by the golden fall leaves on the ash trees. He looked so cute with his Superman lunch kit, matching knapsack and new runners. Melody stood with pride in her boys, waved encouragingly when they drove off, looking at her through the bus windows. Tears pricked the corner of her eyes. It was a milestone to see them grow up and go to school. Melody went inside to enjoy a fresh cup of coffee, all alone in her kitchen. She closed her eyes and allowed herself the luxury of a familiar daydream. She imagined herself standing on the warm sands of the island of Fiji. Although she had never been there, it was a distant desire to go. In her imagination, she could see the endless aquamarine blue ocean meet the tropical sky. She could hear the sound of its gentle waves lapping the shore. A fringe of palm trees swayed like a grass skirt, and her toes touched the refreshing water. Melody allowed herself to remember Ebony, the little baby that was in heaven, the one whose biological father had been from Fiji. She wondered what he was doing at this stage in his life.